right, everyone. Well, it's 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining. It looks like we may have a few more people coming in, but for the purposes of time, we'll start. And I do want to let you know ahead of time, this will be recorded and distributed to the attendees later on. And please silence your devices and put yourself on mute if you're not speaking. And hopefully we have no technical difficulties, but if we do, thank you for your patience in advance. So I'm Melanie Schmies, Director of Business and Economic Research here at the Greater Naples Chamber. Welcome to the 2020 Collier County Economic Development Summit. This is the first year we're doing this, really with the purpose of bringing together the key players in economic development in the county, and those with extensive knowledge of economic development. I'm just getting everyone in the same room and sharing ideas and having some discussions. The flow of today, the FGCU team, Ashugul, Dr. Timur, and Dr. Amir will be presenting on key economic indicators. I will be presenting on the Partnership for Collier's Future Economy, and Sean will finish us off with presenting on internal county programs and initiatives to support economic development. So with that, Dr. Timur and Dr. Amir, I will let you get started.
All right, good morning, everyone. I'm Amir Nido, Interim Director of the Regional Research Institute at FGCU. So let me share my screen here real quick. Where is it? Oh, okay, got it. Sorry about that. So, all right, can everyone see the presentation all right? Okay, so today we're gonna be focusing on the impact of COVID in Collier County, and Dr. Timur is gonna do the presentation with me. So we're going to start thinking about with an overall impact of COVID-19 in the US economy, and then talk about Collier indicators, and finally some more Southwest Florida impacts with the RERI survey. So if we look at looking at the GDP, the gross domestic product in the US, with COVID-19, this is an unprecedented crisis, pandemic. And if we look at the levels of decrease, quarterly GDP decline, the levels are way greater than any one that we've seen before. Like thinking about the Great Recession and all that, it's 2-3 times the size of these impacts on the quarterly GDP. So here we're looking at quarter to quarter changes in GDP in the country. So we see that 2020 Q2, we had over 9% decrease in the real gross domestic product. The next indicator is employment. So if we look at the numbers on GDP, right, for quarter 3, or if we look at the month to month, we start seeing an increase in employment right after the peak of the crisis in April. But if we look at the numbers month to month compared to on a year-to-year comparison, so we see that we're still on a recovery side, and the levels are still way greater than those of the Great Recession. So we see things are improving, but at a slower pace than what we all anticipated. So we've been talking about different types of shapes of recovery. So this is a slower recovery than anticipated. So here I just want to bring to the attention the Florida reopening plan, so we can have that in mind as we are going through this presentation. And I think these are the key dates for Florida. Mainly Disney closing in March, and then each of the phases of reopening the economy. And as Ashugul will talk later, by chance, all these dates here coincided with our surveys. So we really could take a look on how each of these phases impact the local economy. And then the last two big dates are the closes and reopenings of bars in the state. So talking about looking at Collier County specifically in some indicators, the first one I want to bring our attention to is passenger activity. We know the leisure and hospitality industry is important here, and we see that we were off to a good start in the year, February and January, with levels above the previous 3 years, and then the crisis hit, and mainly in April when we had a lockdown. We have been seeing a recovery, and one interesting pattern that I want to point out is the shape or the slope of this recovery here. If we look at previous years, we've seen the decline in passenger activity throughout May to September, but now because people are actually coming to Florida to get away from other areas, such as the Middle East, New England, where we had a stricter lockdown, we've seen actually a recovery and more people coming here. So this pattern, we are not seeing a decline in flights, but actually it picking up from previous months. If we look at taxable sales, so here we're talking about all sales in the county, there's two things I want to point out. First, that we have seen a recovery, slowly recovery here, and that we expect to continue as the economy reopen. And the other big thing here is that if we look at the taxable sales, the big part that we missed was the peak of the sales from the tourists. But I'm a person who likes to look at the bright side of things. And one thing that we can notice from this trend here is that we dodged a bigger bullet by not having the coronavirus impact us back in November as it did with China and other countries like in Europe. So we were able to get part of these taxable sales from tourists, which are important for our economy. Another important industry is construction. So here we have single family permits. We see a slight growth over time. The 2020, we're only looking at the first 7 months. That's why it's lower than previous years. And then if we look at the existing single home sales in red, we see also a slight increase, but this increase here is being pretty much being driven by the last 2 months, June and July. Otherwise, it would have pretty much a flat trend. And June and some explanation for this pickup in sales, home sales, is on one hand, people moving, deciding to relocate from other places in Florida, which has more sparse areas, people can social distance, less strict lockdowns, etc. But also with the increasing work from home trend, people are deciding to upgrade and have an office space as well. So we have seen this increasing home sales in the county. And last, I want to bring unemployment rates. So we're still down. We're down from April, which was the peak in unemployment rate. We're at 9% now in July. But two things here to note. First, the labor force participation is increasing, meaning people looking for jobs is increasing, which is a good thing because it shows people are getting more comfortable with the economy and trying to look for employment. But again, our economy is still on a lockdown, not a lockdown, but we're still constrained, right? We cannot open 100%. So employment opportunities are still not all there. So we see also this increase in unemployment, but mostly driven by more people looking for jobs and industries not being able to expand to full capacity yet. So I'll turn over to Dr. Timur, who's going to talk about the coronavirus impact survey.
Thank you, Amir. So this survey was designed to assess the impact of coronavirus by business executives and owners on different time periods during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the data here represents their concerns and more like quantifying their concerns as economic impact. All right, Amir, next slide, please. Okay, let's begin with sales revenue. Baseline is late March and follow up on late April, May, and June. What you see here on the slide are the responses on a question. Over the past 30 days, sales revenue has declined, remained the same, or increased. So what you see here, as the economy was shut down with a stay-home order in April, of course, we saw big impact on demand, therefore sales revenue. 90% of the participants said that sales revenue declined in April. As the economy started to open, we see some signs of recovery, even though still 60% of the participants said decline in sales revenue in June. However, 20% said that sales revenue increased in June. So the good news is that percentage of businesses reporting decrease in revenues diminished, and percent of businesses reporting increase in revenues has been trending upward. Next slide, please. So this is on the employees laid off. As you see here, in March 2020, 20% of responding executives said they laid off at least 80% of the workforce as a result of the coronavirus. But when we compared in June 2020, 54% of executives indicated that they have brought back some of their laid off and furloughed employees over the past 30 days. Next slide, please. So looking at our region, hospitality industry is very important. And we see that during the peak, hospitality industry was hit harder. 100% expressed that decrease in revenues. As economy opened, larger percentage reported increases in revenues and small percentage reported decrease of revenues compared to non-hospitality industries. So when we look at this trend nationwide, MSAs with high concentration of hospitality businesses are posting more jobs, suggesting faster recovery. Next slide, please. So again, looking at employees laid off in the hospitality industry, let's make the comparison for March 2020 and June 2020. In March 2020, 37% of responding executives at the hospitality industry said they laid off at least 80% of the workforce. And looking at June 2020, 74% of executives in the industry indicated that they have brought back some of their laid off and furloughed employees over the past 30 days. Next slide, please. Okay, so in terms of looking at the data Dr. Nito presented and some of the survey results, one thing very obvious that we have still significant uncertainty. So, but of course we need to note that thankfully, recessions do not last forever, and neither will a coronavirus recession. At some point, the economy will reopen and start growing again, although what the recovery might look like is unclear. So, shape of the recovery depends on spread or vaccine, different shocks to each industry, and some are related to production structure, and others are demand only. And there are many assumptions of the recovery. It could be a V shape. It could be a fast recovery. That's what the V shape represents here. It could be U, slow recovery. It could be double W, which means double dip, concern of having second wave. It could be K, Well, that means some industries grow where others shrink, and we see some evidence of that. And L is the most pessimistic, with significant slowdown in productivity growth. So one thing we have to note that COVID-19 artificially impose a shock in the economy, not the market signals as we have seen in the past crisis or recession. So it is hard to use market signals for recovery and of course, other needed changes in industries and economy. So interest rates, that is very important, looking at the economic indicators, is expected to remain low to meet an increase in demand for liquidity. Businesses rely on credit to cover their operations in the face of falling sales, and consumers run up their credit cards or other sources of credit to make up for loss of income. So it's very important component. Well, although the various forms of fiscal and monetary stimulus have created trillions of dollars in new money, inflation will not pose any threat to the US economy until sustainable growth returns. So in other words, inflation is only a threat if we cannot go back to sustainable growth. Lockdown and restrictions make market signals not as reliable, but even small business owners receive a CARES Act grant. That money won't increase consumer demand and sales for the businesses, goods and services. So consumer demand needs to be started for economic recovery. So that is a very, very important piece for us. So what we know, there are a lot of unknown, but what we know is that personal responsibility and behavior can help control COVID-19 and faster economic recovery, so more jobs could come back. For that reason, in terms of providing a comfortable and confident environment to consumers again, at FGCU, we started an initiative that's called Restart Southwest Florida Recovery Initiative. So our goal is here a campaign to bring a renewed sense of confidence and prosperity to the region. So please visit the website for details, but we think that everybody has a role to bring confidence in comfortable environment to businesses to open up the economy more. So thank you.
You're on mute, Melanie.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Timur and Dr. Amir. Next, I will be presenting on the Partnership for Collier's Future Economy. So the Partnership for Collier's Future Economy was established back in 2013. It's a partnership between the Greater Naples Chamber and Collier County government, in which the Chamber runs certain economic development programs. These programs include business retention and expansion, attraction and relocation, serving as the economic development liaison to state partner organizations, and overseeing the Partnership Advisory Board and certain other special projects, which will be covered during this presentation. So there have been 137 BRE visits conducted since March of 2019 when I came on board. These visits assist in identifying risks of business relocation out of Collier County. They also help identify potential expansions in Collier County, which we can then assist in facilitating those expansions. And they also create a knowledge base of our industry and business opportunities in the county. And this program is so important because 80% of new employees or new jobs and capital investment comes from companies that are already existing in our community. You can see to the left, this is how we target, or how I target the visits. So primary employers are a key target, large employers, companies with headquarters in Collier County, targeted industries as specified by the state, which we're hoping to get into a deeper discussion into targeted industries after the presentations, as well as key legacy industries, because we know that they're still important as diversifying is as well. The top industries that have been visited are professional, scientific, and technical service industries and manufacturing. So these are high skill, high wage industry, and also industry that assists in diversifying our local economy. Out of this bucket of 137 companies, there have been 5 relocations, 8 expansions, and this has also led to the creation of a targeted list that currently has 16 companies. So this list consists of companies who have indicated plans for a major future expansion, or in some cases, smaller startups who are nearing their second stage growth. So we targeted on them, have more focused discussions and more periodic check-ins to make sure that they have all the resources they need to stay in Collier County. I'd like to draw your attention to this number, 50 million. So this is a potential investment that Collier County could receive if companies from this small bucket of 137 actually follow through with their expansions, whether that be a major hiring, a build out to a new building, purchase of a building. And so just think of, out of 137, this is a potential investment Collier County could receive. There's 25,000 plus businesses in Collier County. So it's so important for us to keep a pulse on the economy and make sure that the correct processes are in place to make this a business-friendly community. Top concerns of companies who are relocating or who have relocated or are indicating that they may relocate are high impact fees, finding qualified employees, and we know housing affordability is a big driver of that. Affordable or suitable space to expand. So properly zoned, the right amount of square footage, and close enough to where their employees are comfortable commuting. And lastly, the lack of retention incentives. Outcomes of these visits have been access to resources, business-to-business connections, and connections to business support organizations. So as economic developers and community leaders, we may be very aware of these resources, but the recipients of these resources, the business community, sometimes are very unaware that these exist. For example, we've connected ag companies out in Immokalee to potential USDA grants to upgrade their equipment. There have also been multiple connections, potential vendor and supply chain connections within our Collier businesses to keep that capital flowing here in Collier County. The partnership also serves in attracting and relocation along with the county, and we are the point of contact for relocation prospects in the county. So there have been 9 RFPs answered from Enterprise Florida. These are highly targeted companies or target industries with high skill, high wage jobs. And so the team is constantly working to improve on the marketing packets, the data that is sent out, and just some snapshots. Project Center was looking to move into the Immokalee Airport area. So we work very closely in that instance with the airport, with the electric co-op to make sure we're providing the best data and that we're making our community a prime place for business attraction. The partnership also responds to website inquiries through collieredo.org. There have been over 115 website inquiries answered since 2019. Most of the time, these are startups or smaller businesses who just want a connection to a place like the SBDC to help with their business plan. But what is so important about aggregating the data from these inquiries is that we can then see what the recurring questions are and address those. You know, if it's constantly about permitting or licensing, well, can we spotlight that on the Collier EDL website? Can we talk to the county departments and see if there's a way to make processes easier? And also it allows us to follow these companies as they're reaching a second stage growth phase to hopefully retain them in Collier County if it's a good fit. The partnership also serves as the economic development liaison to our local, state, and federal economic development partners. In the past, last year, we hosted Enterprise Florida and Florida Power and Light. And these meetings and connections are important because Enterprise Florida, for example, they're constantly talking to prospective businesses who would move here. So we want to keep Collier County in the forefront of their minds. Florida Power and Light, when they were hosted, we were able to connect a solar cells company with them. FPL was able to share some great resources, and that company is now looking to establish and grow in Collier County. Other involvement, so through all these visits and knowledge of industry, it really helps to communicate with trade organizations, advisory boards, and other players to share the feedback on behalf of the business community. And down the line, that could have workforce and talent pipeline implications, or sometimes implications for grant funding, et cetera. Lastly, the Partnership Advisory Board and other projects. The Partnership Advisory Board oversees economic development on behalf of the Chamber, and it's comprised of 13 individuals representing the county, the city, and private enterprise. An initiative right now that came out of the board was remote workforce attraction. So this was formulated with the purpose of, you know, with COVID, many companies are telling workers they can work from anywhere, and even post-COVID or pre-COVID. So quality of life is already sold in Collier County. Why not have those workers come here? And that has implications for induced spending, increasing our tax base, and also diversifying industry and occupation that may not have otherwise been here. Economic Development Week is in its third consecutive year of celebration. Unfortunately, we weren't able to do as large of a celebration as we would have liked, but there are certainly plans for that in the future. Well, this year, we weren't able to have it the way we would have liked, but that's okay. Behind the Gates, implications for targeting business owners or connections to large corporations who maybe vacation here half the year. How can we get into contact with them and see if there's implications for them to move part of their operation to Collier County? And community development, really just sharing the importance of sustainable growth, smart economic development, and why that's so important to sustain our economy. And again, the partnership has been around since 2013. So prior to me coming on board, some accomplishments were securing $3 million in grant funding and in partnership with the Chamber and the school board for the Center of Manufacturing Excellence. That was through the Florida Job Growth Grant Fund. The creation of a fast track program. So that is for targeted projects, targeted economic development projects to get the operation up and running, get employees in the door, and make sure that whole process goes smoothly for the company. And over the completion of over 300 BRE visits since 2019. And you know, that's important, as I discussed earlier, making sure to touch base with our local businesses. So thank you. Next, Sean Callahan will be presenting on internal government programs and initiatives to support economic development. Thank you.
Thanks, Melanie. Let's see if I can get my screen up here real quick. Can everybody see my slide deck okay? Get a thumbs up. Everybody's muted, okay. Good morning, everybody. I
see it, it looks good.
I know everybody who's participating live, but we are recording this. So I'm Sean Callahan, I'm the Executive Director of Corporate Business Operations. And today I wanted to walk through some changes, some new programs, and then some updates on development and programs that we've been working on here at the county with all of our partners, heavily involved with the chamber as well through that partnership that Melanie just briefed us on. So very briefly, I want to talk a little bit about Collier EDL. Collier EDL was really conceived back when the partnership for Collier's Future Economy was constructed, but it was never really utilized fully, I think, to its full potential. And over the years, we had many different external partnerships and many different initiatives that I think took on their own branding and weren't as cohesive as they could have been. So what we've really tried to do this year is bring it back to that idea of a central Collier economic development organization that utilizes the different things that you can see on the screen. So external partnerships like the one that we've had in existence with the Chamber of Commerce through the partnership, new partnerships that we've created and expounded on with Florida Gulf Coast University, other educational institutions, and things like SBDC and SCORE, who've always been there but haven't really been centralized. So we want to bring that through one brand as Collier EDL. I think through that, we as a county as well looked at our internal operations through a couple of different internal working groups that we held and saw a better way that we could leverage all of the county's resources through one avenue, which also fits into there. And from there, you can really see a cohesive approach to different development and business opportunities, and then our marketing and communications, which I'll expand upon a little bit more, can really be driven through one brand and a better coordinated effort to get information out to the community, be that business, internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and what have you. So the first thing that we did this year was we looked at the multiple different websites that existed, all for different economic initiatives that the county and our partners utilize, whether it be our accelerator program, or partnership, or our own internal website as a county, and tried to.
Your voice is kind of going in and out, so stay close to your microphone.
Okay. Leah just told me I was cutting in and out, so I'll try to speak a little bit louder. But one of the first things that we did was look at all of the different websites that we had to really list these different initiatives and come up with a way to put those in one. So our new website, which is on the page, you can get a little bit of preview of a screenshot of it, is collieredo.org. It's always been a website that we've used through the partnership, but we've added a bunch of different components through our accelerator program, through our incentive program, so that there's a one-stop shop for information for anybody who's looking to the county. Most notably through this, the CRA, the Immokalee CRA brought in some external consultants to look at how they were set up, and one of the things that they pointed out in their report was the lack of a cohesive site for this type of information for site selectors and businesses that might be looking from the outside. So we launched that back in July 2020. We co-branded that and used the same company that does the Paradise Coast website, which is utilized by our Convention and Visitors Bureau and Tourism Division to promote the destination for tourism, because we believe that one of the biggest selling points for businesses to relocate to stay here is the quality of life factor that we offer. And that's going to allow us in the future to really take the investment that we make as a county in tourism every year and leverage that with some of the resources that we have for economic development to really get that message out externally. We've created a newsletter that I hope that you're all receiving. If you're not, get with Melanie and I, and we'll make sure that you get that. But overall, what this is allowing us to do is have more centralized messaging and information about the different initiatives that are going on with the county, whether it be policy initiatives or incentives that are available that may not be realized by our business community that exists or might be interested in coming here, but really have that cohesive message. One thing that I'd like to touch on very briefly here is the first foray into a blended message between our tourism division. We recently received an allocation of CARES Act funding that's allowed us to put a marketing campaign together that will hopefully help both our visitor industry, our small businesses, and our hospitality industry, which we all know has been hit the heaviest by this pandemic, to get their word out. And a little bit different from how we've done it in the past, we're going to have a local component of this campaign. You know, one of the things that we've seen in different surveys, be it from businesses and that are impacted, is the lack of consumer confidence to actually go out and patronize businesses. So we've gotten to create a campaign that will be used both here locally to promote our local business, and then shot out to targeted markets where we see our seasonal community, our visitors coming from, to promote Collier County, not only through our own normal destination marketing, but to also promote the safe resumption of activities from the COVID-19 campaign. So this is going to be paid media, this is going to be print media, and there's actually a heavy focus on digital and social media, which marks a shift from where we've done. And one of the tools that we're going to be able to utilize by this, which both fascinates me and scares me at the same time when you talk about digital media, is the ability to connect with consumers who see these ads and then decide to come to the destination, be it local or from far away, and actually track where they spend their money and what businesses they patronize. So through this marketing effort, not only are we going to make those marketing resources that are being developed available to small businesses, especially in the hospitality industry, but we're also going to provide this information behind it once those marketing campaigns finish, in hopes that when those businesses decide to go out with their own marketing campaigns, that they can use this information to help them target customers more effectively. And by knowing where your customers are coming from and what businesses they're going to, I think we can more effectively put that message out and attract people here and show businesses where they can effectively advertise. So that's an exciting thing, and it's sort of our first foray into not only a destination message, but also one that's aimed at promoting our business community as a whole. And we hope to do more of that in the future, which is why I wanted to give you that example. Some new partnerships that we've formed in the past year and more recently have been through our accelerator program with Florida Gulf Coast University's School of Entrepreneurship. We're very excited about this partnership. FGCU and Collier County came to an agreement back in May of this year for the SOE, the School of Entrepreneurship, to take over the operation of the Naples Accelerator. We have Dr. Kalanui and have hired some additional staff to allow us to do that. They actually began that program August 15th. We have 24 participants in our first cohort. And we are in the process of scheduling a very Shark Tank-like pitch competition early in the new year that we hope all of you can attend, and that we're very excited about promoting some of the different initiatives that FGCU will offer as the operator of that accelerator, and hope to see some success in the companies that go through that. But what it's really allowed us to do is something that we've always seen as an improvement that's necessary at the accelerator, is to have a very structured program that upfront businesses are assessed at where their product or their service is in the market, and then where its weaknesses are, what it really will take to launch and connect that brand with funding, which is the intent of the accelerator in its whole. And we're very excited to have FGCU on board to help us do that. We do have a culinary accelerator out in Immokalee as well. And this is one that's been interested, that we've seen an uptick in interest in throughout COVID. As you saw in FGCU's earlier presentation, especially at the onset of COVID-19, there was a big layoff or reduction in employment for our hospitality workers, many who are in the food service business or the services business that was reduced during that time. We saw a lot of them take an interest in some of the different homemade products that they had made. There was a story that came out last week on the news about the Sauce Boss, who is a entrepreneur who's now in our culinary facility out in Immokalee, who was formerly a hairstylist, that when they were forced to close, she actually took this garlic sauce that she makes, which is fantastic. I would recommend definitely trying it once it comes to market. and started producing that in larger quantities out in our facility there. She's had some interest from our local supermarkets, from Wynn's Market, and is in the process of making sure that she's got the proper certifications to actually bring her sauce to market. So an example of somebody who saw a reduction in employment because of the pandemic and has since shifted and used one of our programs to do so. The other one that we'll tout is Karina's Hot Sauce. She recently had a meeting and subsequently had an order placed with Cisco Food Systems, which is a huge wholesale distributor for a hot sauce that she's been creating. She's been in the Culinary Accelerator for about 1.5 years. So we're very excited about that. But I think the Culinary Accelerator is an interesting proposition at this time, because we've seen folks who have lost their jobs due to the pandemic actually utilize that facility now. One other initiative that I do want to touch on that has seen a big uptick, and rightfully so for where they are in the process, are our innovation zones. So the county has 3 designated innovation zones in Ave Maria, Golden Gate City, and then Activity Center 9, which for those of you, I'll show you where it is, but it's the I-75 and Davis Boulevard intersection there off exit 101 on I-75. And innovation zones were created a few years ago by our board, and meant to designate areas that were ripe for development so that we could concentrate those commercial activities and make sure they were compatible with the surrounding development. So what it did was set aside an economic trust fund that was based on tax incentive financing. So as property values or as development increases in the area, it would allot those increase in the property values into a trust fund that we could use for a very flexible incentive pool. But along with that came a zoning overlay. And for those of you that have talked with companies, oftentimes, rezoning can be an extended period of time. And when a company is looking to relocate in its immediacy, often those timelines can affect their decision on where they come. So along with these innovation zones, there are zoning overlays that have been making their way through the process here internally and are going to come to fruition this year. So the first one that we're going to do is actually in the Golden Gate City Economic Development Zone, which is one of our innovation zones. And that'll be coming to the Planning Commission on October the 8th, and hopefully making its way to the board. But what those zoning overlays do is in fact change the development standards and permitted uses to be able to target targeted industries that we want to come in there. And along with it, makes adjustments to some of the things in our land development code that are seen as prohibited for promotion of mixed use activities, whether that be a reduction in parking requirements or a reduction in some of the setbacks to promote more mixed use activities in that concentrated feel to development, but also just overall to make our zoning process for a company that fits a use that's intended for the area to be more streamlined and be quicker. And that coupled with those economic trust funds that I described earlier can really help us target the types of companies that we have for those areas and make sure that they can get in there as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. Now, one area that I'll talk about, which is very interesting, is actually that Activity Center 9. So the Innovation Zone, if you can see my pointer, I'm going around it right now, sort of circles that big intersection on I-75. There's been a bunch of different things that have happened over the past couple of years that have really spurred an immediate interest in development of that area. The first of which is actually a state project. So the FDOT has a big improvement to the I-75 exit in that area. So it's going to be easier for ingress egress of industries to get on I-75, one of the main thoroughfares in the area. But the county's also made a lot of strategic investments around that area as well. One that everybody's probably familiar with is the $100 million sports park that's being built off in the City Gate Commerce Park. We've purchased to the north, you can see the area that's designated the Golden Gate Golf Course, which is slated for some redevelopment of its intended use to still be a golf course, but also we've got a arrangement with Club Corps to come in and build a Big Shots, which is a competitor for Topgolf. There's an affordable housing project that's going to go in there, state nursing homes, and we're currently evaluating the site for a couple other uses. But I think that county investment, combined with the fact that there's large infrastructure improvements, and combined with the fact that there's going to be a zoning overlay that comes in the near future, has really ripened that area for development. You can see to the west of the sports park is a project that I'll tell you a little bit about next, but it's a large company that's relocating here. The star down there is actually going to be an Amazon last mile distribution center. And then there are vacant areas in that same existing pod for the innovation zone that could be developed more that we're currently looking at. So the Uline distribution center is a proposed project to the west of the sports complex. It's going to be about 1 million square foot facility. Uline is a large wholesale and distribution company. I don't think at its onset it was the prime project that we always envisioned abutting our sports park, but so far through talking with them, we've come to a really good place with where they're going to be put in. It's going to create some jobs that we need here. And again, along with that Amazon center that's to the southwest of that, it raises questions to, are we being looked at as a place for a distribution and logistics hub? Are there future opportunities for that are coming in? But either way, it shows an initiative like innovation zones that bring that creative use of both tax incentives and expeditious zoning, and really can target growth to certain areas of the county. And when you zoom out of that area that is to the east there in that innovation zone and look out to eastern Collier County, I think you see the opportunities that are there for some more holistic development plans if we continue these initiatives, which are obviously forwarded by partnerships that we have with the Chamber and all of you. Last but not least, I want to talk about our redevelopment areas. So we do have 2 community redevelopment areas that are designated, one in Immokalee and then one in the Bayshore Gateway Triangle area. We're very excited about the Gateway Mini Triangle project closing this year. We're currently looking at a date in November to close and redevelop, but that's an example of a prime piece of real estate that is in a traditionally underdeveloped zone that we've creatively structured with a partnership. We're running a little bit short on time here, so I won't get into the details, but we're very excited to have that. We think that's going to be a catalyst project for that area. But again, an example of the county using a variety of different resources to designate and find areas that are good for redevelopment and moving those forward. So just real briefly, and I'll open this up because I know we wanted to leave a little bit of time for discussion at the end, but some future initiatives that we're looking at. So targeted industries. Melanie talked about this a little bit. The state legislature did not reauthorize the qualified targeted industries program. So it's not the end of the world for us. A lot of our incentives were set to be complementary to that. But I think the biggest thing the biggest question it raises is that every 4 years, the state would go in and do a very wide evaluation of what the state's targeted industries are, right? They're high growth, they're high wage, they're less susceptible to downturn. And they're not going to do that anymore. So the last update we have is from 2016. Now, we've always talked about, we as Collier County, how do we look at what we have and what exists here and come up with our own set of targeted industries? Because even the state's list, it was a very broad use, and we probably have more specialized uses that we could look at here for when we decide our targeted industries, whether that be attracting new companies here or trying to focus on the existing industries that are already here and figuring out how to make it easier for them to expand and prosper in the county. And along with that, I think it leads to the different community projects that Melanie has described as in chamber initiatives, and then later on actually looking at our existing incentive programs and seeing if there's any revisions that we need to make, be it whether that's shifting in the area of going more friendly to small business or reevaluating where we have some of those in targeted areas and seeing how we can do that more. But all of that's on the table, and it's things that we want to continue a discussion with our partners and figure out where we can get the best bang for our buck, per se, with the investments that the county's making in economic development through both ourselves and our partners. So with that, I will wrap up my part of the presentation, and I think we're going to open it for discussion and questions and